Education, Mr. Gert Oosthuizen, diverted from his written speech to lash out at the establishment of a so-called Bokkie-week.
What we need in this country is to join the hands, which we will be doing as a ministry, of the Premier of the North-West Province and the MEC for Sport there, to approach the Human Rights Commission to investigate that. But more than that, we need society and every political party to stand up and to say, Bokkie-week is so uit, soos apartheid, it's wrong. We must say that, we must be vocal, and we must not catch flies of one another in the process.
The chairperson of the Sports and Recreation Portfolio Committee, Nzamendi Mdagane, said of concern to his committee was the fact that transformation and development in sport was taking place at a very slow pace.
Some sporting codes have all but collapsed. Indigenous sports in non-existence in rural areas. There appears to be lack of talented players. Another issue that we wanted to emphasize is a cancer of corruption that has taken hold within some entities.
Emphasizing the need to be active in sport, Mr. Mdakana said members of parliament should also become more active and practice what they preach.
We think the profile of the department has been raised, and all of us as members of parliament, I think we are going to play a very important role in ensuring that we participate in all sporting activities. Even here in Parliament, Honorable Lee, it's important that we do that as members of Parliament in order for us to remain very healthy and participate in many activities on that. We wouldn't lead a society on sport if in ourselves we are not playing sport. Therefore, it's very important, all of us, that we play this role.
Mponeng Rabotap, who is the DA Shadow Minister of Sport and Recreation, said sport brought together communities, thus helping to bridge the cultural divide in South Africa. It also provided a forum to learn skills such as discipline, confidence and leadership. But he said there were a number of issues that hindered transformation.
Lack of sporting facilities coupled with corruption continued to hinder transformation. There is a large outcry about local businesses not helping with sponsors, but it is merely because of our federation's need to get their acts together. Honorable Minister, the Olympic Games are just around the corner, and the state of readiness for our teams may not be determined by their preparedness in terms of participation, but also by the way we rally behind them financially.
Mr. Rabotap welcomed the fact that the Princess of Monaco will be assisting South African swimmers to prepare for the Olympic Games. But he also thought that SASCOC was putting too much pressure on South African athletes by promising to bring home 12 medals. More must also be done to enhance local support for South Africa's athletes to the Games.
This is not the route that needs to be taken to encourage athletes, as our own Blade Runner, Oscar Pistorius, has stated that athletes are already under pressure from themselves and their own expectations. Regarding the over 80 million allocation by government and the National Lotteries Board, there was a complaint by SASCOC that underfunding had led to decline in South Africa's Olympic performances. South Africa's performance in Beijing was dismal, yielding only one medal, but this one, we support the Minister's request to the corporate South Africa to support and contribute to the Olympic effort. What happened to the campaign to support the local markets as our kit for our teams came from China? Again, a foreign airline was almost used to transport our teams to London just before SAA came in. Mr. Chairman, the DA believes that for us to get support from the local market, it will only be possible if we also support them. It will not help us to point fingers when we do not lead by example. We must all not forget that local is lacking.
Issues raised by members of the Extended Public Committee range from lack of infrastructure in rural areas to calls for more funding for the department. We pick up on the address of COPE's Graham Mackenzie, who said the Department of Sport and Recreation's budget allocation of just above 840 million rands was hardly enough to develop sport in South Africa.
The department has a staggering 29% of posts that are unfilled. The focus on sport in South Africa is of such a nature that it can indeed be the motivating force for building national unity, social cohesion, and economic prosperity. Without being appropriately resourced from a human capital perspective, it will struggle to deliver on its mandate to transform sport in South Africa. COPE believes strongly that our budget allocation of 848.4 million is grossly underfunded, and it makes it difficult to fulfill the various mandates of the department. The fact that the President in the SONA, the Minister of Finance in his budget speech in an Olympics year, and the Minister in the Presidency in his deliberations regarding the NPC, none of whom mentioned sport as a high priority, would suggest that the Executive appears to have placed sport way down the priority list. Thankfully, we have a Minister who is energetic, decisive, and hands-on.
The social upliftment program seems to be limited to short visits by sport teams to underprivileged areas, but this sometimes comes across as an exercise in public relations, since nothing much seems to happen when the cameras are turned off and the media disappear. This is clearly not enough. Partnerships and linkages need to be built and maintained with visiting teams, officials and organizations. When these events are over and media attention subsides, the masses leave our shores. The momentum created from these events must be maintained and used to develop sport in our country, especially in underprivileged areas.
South Africa is renowned for its successful hosting of international sports events, but the nation is regrettable never kept abreast of the expenditure patterns of the revenue generated from such events. This creates a loophole for administrators to spend the funds as they deem fit. The funds generated from these events should be spent on sports development, as my colleague, Honorable Lucas, has just said before me. In addition, as a country, we have not been able to coordinate the programs of the Departments of Arts and Culture, Sports and Recreation, and Tourism in a way that promotes tourism. As the Minister has made an example of Australia, it is befitting of me as well to make an example of Australia, where three portfolios I have just mentioned work in tandem to promote tourism.
At various universities, students from minority groups have obtained degrees in sport and recreation or similar fields who cannot find jobs in those fields. Now, does this present an opportunity for the Department of Sport to employ these young people and send them out to go forth and develop new sports stars in the poor and rural areas? We have a database of such youngsters and are willing to talk to the Minister about making use of their talent to develop and foster new sportsmen and women.
Minister, the disparity that we see today was created by apartheid has delayed us and handicapped progress in our country. I'm mentioning this even though some people do not want us to blame it on apartheid. However, Mr. Honorable Groenewald, it is apartheid which spent 578 rand on a white child and spend only 46 rand on a black child. It is apartheid that made the structural form of facilities in white areas to differ from those in black areas. And black people of the disadvantaged communities could not use those better facilities which were only found in white residential areas. For instance, there is a stadium called Gert Oosthuizen that I know in the Northwest. Gert Oosthuizen. It is a stadium that is owned by a school. Now, the communities that surround that area cannot use that facility or cannot use that stadium. If members of the disadvantaged community want to use that stadium, will be referred to the school. And the school will tell you that Ngonyama it's an African school. They will go like Ngonyama, can you help me? You moet eers met die voorsitter gaan praat.
We still have time left, so let's listen to some of the issues highlighted during the budget vote debate on international relations and cooperation. We pick up on the speech of Mr. Ngonyama of the Congress of the People, who raised his party's concern about the situation in the two Sudans.
Sincerely hopes that the panel led by President Thabo Mbeki will end its mission by bringing the parties together to sign and implement an agreement which will be backed by the international community. The suggestion from some groups in the conflict that the Mbeki panel has too little authority to force the warring parties to settle must be speedily addressed by canvassing wider international support while there is still a window of opportunity. Otherwise, we may have another two failed states in Africa. Time is of the essence.
The African agenda should select and prioritize its strategic objectives, Mr. Chairman, in such a manner that the protection of the economic and political sovereignty of the African countries take precedence. This could be realized through the resilient pursuance of the regional economic development and integration, and not a continuous pumping of massive aid, as has been thus far the case with the post-war development policies of the rich nations of the world. Honorable Chair, we must not allow a backsliding of the African agenda. The agenda must be aggressively pursued, supported by all African nations, if this continent is ever going to stand sovereign and independent of both Western and Eastern influences.
The good role South Africa has played in exporting the principles of good governance, peace and democracy to the continent of Africa is well documented. Despite these achievements, the groundswell of discontent among the poor about government's poor service delivery record demands that we review the amount of resources we plow into the African Renewal Project. We cannot go around the continent fighting other people's fires while government's poor service delivery record and its neglect of poor fans the fire in our shores. It is going to be difficult to justify the amount of money we spend on creating stability on the continent when millions of our people struggle to make ends meet.
And that is where we have to leave it. A View from the House will be off air for a couple of days because of an extended broadcast of SABC's Morning Live on both Thursday and Friday. But join us again on Monday when we talk to the Deputy Justice and Constitutional Affairs Minister Andre Snell about the budget of that department. We will also bring you snippets from the budget vote debates on science and technology and public service and administration. Until we meet again, goodbye.